Wonderful. Thank you. And my name is Amber Zeuner, and I am an associate attorney with the Miller Elder Law Firm. And I am here today with the lovely Star Bradbury to talk a little bit with you all about how to grow old in your home. And Star Bradbury, I'm welcoming her back. She's been on one of our previous webinars as well.
Thank
So if you haven't
you.
watched that one, go ahead and do so as well. And she actually published recently, within the past year, a book on successfully navigating your parents' senior years. You can see it in her background there. So she is an expert in the field, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber. Well, I decided that I needed to put my 24 years in senior living to work, helping other people. One thing that I learned in all that time of working with really thousands of families is that it's pretty complex out there, navigating what I'd like to point out successfully, aging well. And I will share that even though the book says navigating your parents' senior years, many people buy the book for themselves, and it's easy to extrapolate. And then also share the book or buy the book for their support team or their adult children, and then have a discussion about developing a plan. And no surprise that one of the chapters in the book is aging in place successfully in your home. And that's the topic for our webinar today. It is
Exactly.
a critical question.
So I think the first topic we really want to talk about then is the home you're currently living in your home for aging in place and what that looks like to do it successfully, right?
Yeah, I think that that makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, the first question to start with is the home that you're currently living in going to be the home that you plan to age up in? And when I say age up, people are always a little shocked to hear that the fastest growing demographic, Amber, in the United States is 90 to 100. So I want you to think about your 95-year-old self living in the home you're in now and asking yourself, is your home the right home to age up in? And there's a lot of things, not just the obvious modifications, which we're going to address today, but
Mhm.
the sort of the big picture, the big package. How do you assess from lots of different perspectives how to evaluate if the home that you're in makes sense? There's
Exactly.
safety, there's accessibility, there's lots of things to look at.
And then community as well, where you're at and who's supporting you.
Yeah, that is such a good point because the first question that I ask when I sit down with somebody who says, you know, I need help developing a plan, or I want to run my plan by you and see what you think. Is it solid? But you'd be surprised that the first question I ask is not, is your home 2 stories? Well, that's important. But the biggest question I ask is, how strong is your support system? How strong is your support team? It may be family, it may not be. And there's a lot of things to consider in that question. And then, of course, the other question is your home literally safe to age up in? Are you really at 95 going to be running up 2 flights of stairs if all your bathrooms and bedrooms are upstairs? Do you live way out in the country, you know, an hour away from emergency health care or from your community? Believe me, Amber, I have clients who have lived in beautiful homes, 20 acres, but an hour away. They were solo senior, they lost their spouse, and they were not connected. They were very lonely. So that's another area that you should consider when evaluating is, are you in a home that you can modify? Are you in a home that maybe you should consider downsizing to a smaller home? Lots of older people say, I just can't handle the maintenance of a big home. So these are some of the things that you want to ask yourself. What could I do to make my home safer? Am I too far out in the country, away from community? Am
Yeah.
I getting isolated? Things like that.
So going on that point, then, how strong your personal support system is a really big aspect to growing old in your home and aging in place. And what that looks like for you in particular, be it family, friends, location, it sounds like is a very important consideration. But also if you have a professional support system, correct?
Yes, and that's the second question. How strong is your personal support system, and how strong is your professional? What do I mean by professional? Well, I find that as you get older, the professional team that you've built up becomes even more important. You'll be happy to hear, Amber, that one of the first things on my professional support system is your relationship with a good attorney, and ideally an elder law attorney, because you never know when the expertise of an elder law attorney will really benefit you. And that's not just from the obvious legal documents, which Amber is going to talk about, but being more aware as an elder law attorney of some things that could be pertinent to you as you age. In addition to elder law attorney, I usually say your accountant or your tax person, so that you're on top of all of those kinds of documents. And also, I also throw in a healthcare advocate. Now, what do I mean by healthcare advocate? Well, it might be that you're very close to an adult child who's really there for you even on your professional team. But let's say that you're either don't have children, or as I like to say, don't have children nearby, or sadly, children that you could count on. How do you build up a professional support team to replace maybe the personal support team that you don't have or that you want to augment? So that's a whole nother area to look at, is your professional support team.
Yeah. And going off of what Star said, speaking with an attorney to set up your documents, your healthcare surrogate, power of attorney, living will. We have other webinars that talk about that, so I'm not going to harp on those too much, but those help set up your personal support team for people who can help you make those calls while you age in place. And then, as well as a healthcare advocate, that's a really important factor to have someone making sure that your healthcare needs are taken care of appropriately and you're advocated for to your doctors and
Absolutely.
everyone that's working towards you aging in place and on your behalf. Okay.
Well, I see clients, Amber, who are solo seniors who or they have a partner, they have a wife or a husband or partner, and they're thrown into a medical crisis. They're trying to make difficult decisions about treatment or surgical options, and you wish you had somebody who's super knowledgeable in that area to help you navigate the complex world of medical care,
Which
which,
is very
my
complex.
gosh, just gets more and more complex as we know. The only way you can communicate with your doctor now is you get on the portal, right? And
Type a
and so
message in.
yes, and I really feel for uh, the challenges that people face in today's world, just navigating the medical landscape, and to have a healthcare advocate. And we'll talk more about ideas on how to access that, because there are people available who are trained in this, and uh, you
And I think that goes into resources available for aging in place as well.
yeah.
So, not just having your personal support team and your professional team, but resources available to help your helpers essentially make that work smoothly and seamlessly for you to stay where you're at. So, a home health care aide, essentially, or a companion that can stay with you and make that possible, as well as different types of organizations.
Well, Amber, I'm really glad you mentioned home health care, because I actually tell people that it's not, people may think it's premature to build a relationship with a home care company, home care meaning a home care companion, a home health aide, home health care, are the physical therapist, the occupational therapist, the nurses that might come visit you after an event that typically you're hospitalized or there's surgery or a fall. That's home health. Home care is a home companion. But my advice is ahead of the need to establish a relationship with a home care company so that if you suddenly find yourself in need, that is not the time to try to be scrambling to find somebody. And I advise people to talk to their friends, get a list of companies that are local that provide that level of care, get an idea of how much that's going to cost. You could even interview some of these companies and say, hey, I know I'm having surgery in 6 months, or I don't know when I might need you, but I just like to build a relationship and meet with you. And so that if I call you, you'll know who I am and we'll have something established. So I do advise that you kind of do a little homework ahead of a need so that you know who you would call if you needed somebody for a home companion.
And this way,
And
you know who you like. That's a
yeah,
wonderful
and a
idea.
home companion, sorry, Amber, I didn't mean to interrupt, but for those of you who may not know, you might be thinking, well, what is a home care companion? They're not physical therapists, they're not occupational therapists, they're not nurses. It's just someone who comes into your home, usually 3 hours a day, several days a week. All of these companies have requirements about minimum times that they'll come to your home. But they would help with light housekeeping, meal preparation. They might even be able to take you shopping or take you to a doctor. They can assist with all kinds of what's called activities of daily living, basic activities of daily living. And that might be a huge help, a huge help. And, take the weight off of some of those home requirements and home responsibilities that would make a big difference for you.
Especially when we are talking specifically like we are today about aging in place. And if you're not able to do all of those things on your own anymore, those activities of daily living, it's wonderful to be able to have some help doing those and remaining in a comfortable location that you want to be in.
Right, staying in your home. And so when people say, well, I don't want any help, I don't want strangers in my home, all the more reason to find people ahead of the need and to accept that getting some help actually allows you to stay in your home longer. And I've
Exactly.
really seen that. I've had people tell me, I just wish I'd understood what a difference it would make. And I also want to stress, if you're in a situation where you are a caregiver to a loved one, that's even, I can't stress enough that being able to stay in your home and age successfully and age well means allowing someone to come and help you, especially if you're a caregiver, and giving you some time off and a break from some of those duties. And so, again, establishing relationship ahead of a need, really important.
Yeah, and we actually have a comment here, which is a very good point that I want to make sure gets addressed as well from Deborah. But knowing in advance what your insurance covers as well for these types of services, if it covers anything at all, or if it can help in a way to make you get that care you need.
Absolutely. That's a good point. Um, and I'll throw this in as well. And that is under resources. And I think that's kind of the next thing on our list anyway, Amber. You'll be happy to know we're prepared. That veterans benefits there's so many benefits that are never utilized. So for any of you out there that you are a veteran, you were married to a veteran, there's the service connected. Let me stress that you do not have to be a career veteran to be eligible for benefits, or nor your spouse. And I've talked to so many veteran benefits administrators, and they say millions of dollars are left on the table every year because people just don't know that they're eligible for benefits. And the Veterans Administration will, if you qualify, will provide some home and community-based care through all kinds of different programs. I am not an expert on veterans benefits. I do refer people who I know are, but the Veterans Administration will help pay for some of that home care. They'll even help pay for some modifications to your home if it means you being safe in your home. And then the other thing that we talked about, Amber, was Medicaid. And that, again, don't assume anything about Medicaid, please. Amber will tell you this. Shannon will tell you this. I'll never qualify. I can't qualify, or, I don't believe in Medicaid. Well, you might reconsider if you're thinking that it's going to be in excess of 100,000 to 150,000 a year for long-term care. You might reconsider planning ahead for Medicaid. That's not the title of the seminar, so we're not going to go there. However, there are governmental programs that do
Yeah.
provide home and community-based care, as well as helping to pay for home modification. So having said that, just write that down on your list to look into to see whether you would be able to benefit from any of those in-home assistance and not
Certainly something
at
to
a private
consider.
pay.
Exactly. Something to look into for certain. Whether or not it's going to help you or not, that will be something to have a further conversation regarding. The Medicaid at home is rather limited, but that might
Very
be
limited,
something
but
that would
still.
benefit you. And then the same with veterans benefits. It's worth a consideration, if anything.
You know what we forgot to add to your list, so I'm going to throw it in here. Um, I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with clients and said, "Oh, by the way, do you have a long-term care insurance policy?"
Yes.
And a lot of times people say, "Yeah, I do." To which my next question is, when was the last time you reviewed it or looked at it? Because it's just human nature. There's no judgment here. You took it out 20 years ago, you put it in the file, and you haven't really looked at it. And actually, I'm impressed when people know where it is and they can find it. Lots of times people are like, I don't know where it is. Like, well, so try to find it if you do have a long-term care insurance policy, because 90% of those policies pay for or assist with some kind of home care costs. So most people think long-term care insurance, that's going to help pay for assisted living or skilled nursing. Yes, it should. It should do that as well. But almost always the newer policies they're going to pay for some home care. May not be the same daily reimbursement amount, but you don't know until you read the policy. So if you do have a policy, go back and read it and see and get on top of it so that it's sort of fresh in your mind in terms of what it might cover. Excuse me.
Especially with what we're talking about today, which is getting ahead of the curve and making sure that you have all of your resources and support systems in place for when you need them. So having that long-term care policy in your hand, ready to go, is a very worthwhile endeavor. I also want to ask about, though, for you to talk a little more, Star, about the vial of life you were telling me about. And
True. The vial of life. Um, this is this quirky, funny little thing that I learned about when I worked at Oak Hammock, actually. Although I found out this is more or less a national program. If you go online and Google vial of life, you will find that you can purchase, although I think there may be an organization that gives these away for free, this little vial of life. What is it? It's this plastic tube that you put in the freezer, and in that tube are critical information, up to date medical information. And by the way, vial of life stands for the life part, life-saving information for emergencies. Vial, because it's usually this little plastic tube that you roll papers in and put in. Why the freezer? I don't know. It's one of those quirky, bizarre things. I guess the theory is, well, everyone has a freezer. True. And when EMTs, the emergency medical technicians, come to your door, you usually have a little sign on the door on the window that says vial of life. And it used to be you could have magnets and put things on the freezer. Amber, nothing's metal anymore, so those
not
don't work.
anymore.
Don't You can, I guess, take something, vial of life in the freezer. But here's why this is so important. In that vial of life will be up-to-date medical information, diagnosis, your medications, your emergency contacts. And believe me, if you are a solo senior and you've called 911 and then you're unconscious and they see that sign on the door, they're going to go into your freezer, pull out the information. They're not going to be guessing. Here's your name, here's your medications, here's your diagnosis, here's your doctor, here's your hospital of preference, here's your emergency contacts. And the other thing is, let's say you're lucky enough to still have your partner with you. Well, if it's an emergency, are you really going to have the presence of mind to pull all that information out if the EMTs are peppering you with questions? No, you're going to want that information. So you should have two vial of life, one for you, one for your spouse, or whoever you live with a name on the outside of it. So they're grabbing the right one and you're grabbing it as you're going to the hospital too. So that's just a little small thing that you can do, but with big implications in terms of handling an emergency from your home. So I'm a big fan of the vial of life, and you can spend $20 on a kit, and then the forms are already filled out, so it makes it easier. But go online and look under vial of life. It's a simple thing to do, and it checks some of the important boxes for handling an emergency from your home.
And we actually have a question here as well from Sally. How do you know what to put in a vial of life?
Hi, Sally. I know Sally. Well, that's why those forms come in handy. I would, again, Google vial of life and see if you can open up some forms and download some for free, because it's going to say name, date of birth, emergency medical contact, diagnoses, or all your medications, hospital preference. It's a standardized form. So that's what, that's why I just say it's easier to just buy a kit. It'll also give you the sticker to put on your front door or window. So,
And what about start
mhm.
adding in like your healthcare surrogate or your living
Oh,
will?
absolutely. Yes. In fact, I should have said that. Thank you, Amber. Most people put their living will and healthcare surrogate form in the vial of life. You can add that as well. And I would. I absolutely would. And then you want to make sure, again, that information is current. It's like with a will or trust or anything, you should be reviewing these documents every 5 years. And things change so quickly for people. Something
You.
changes and someone's no longer willing or available or able to be your healthcare surrogate. So you or your personal representative on your will or whatever. So you want to make sure that you're sitting down with your attorney and reviewing that information and checking in with whoever you've listed as your healthcare surrogate. Are they still willing, able, capable?
Yeah. And I think that that goes a little more into what we want to talk about next, which is having that emergency medical information is wonderful at home and having it ready to go. But what about other changes we can make to the home? What might need to be changed in order for it to be a safe environment to age in place in?
Well, that is really, really important because I advise people when they're trying to evaluate, is my home a good home to age in? And then you're going to start with the really basic questions. Um, in a perfect world, the home that you can successfully age up in has no staircases, not a lot of levels. It has easy access, meaning that you could pull into a garage and easily get into your home without a lot of stairs and levels. I talked to a couple up in northern Georgia this week, and even though their home was fairly level, they had modified their bathroom, and there were
Mhm.
and they were up on a knoll, so it was a very steep drop to get down to their garage. And so take the big picture, sit down and write a list of, if I were to stay in my home, I would have to modify it. How? Well, the very first thing that makes sense, Amber, is a bathroom. I was surprised that this particular couple still had a bathtub in their master bath. That is not a good plan. You do not want to have to be stepping over a bathtub to shower as you're aging. And remember now, you should be thinking about this, in your 50s and 60s. You shouldn't be waiting until your 70s, 80s, much less 90s to modify a home. First of all, these are all improvements that you can make to your home that are added value from just a financial perspective. But I looked up some figures that I wanted to share with you. And so if you're sitting there thinking, oh God, I still have a bathtub, I have low toilets, I don't have any safety bars, you need to be making a list and getting some quotes and doing it before there's any kind of medical emergency. You don't have to have a fall to have hip surgery. By the way, I have both my hips replaced. I had them done years ago. What, years ago? Why? Well, that's another story. I'm an old dancer. I didn't have any more cartilage. And so I learned the hard way with the first hip that I didn't have my bathroom modified. Then I modified the bathroom, and sure enough, in time for the second hip replacement. But you do not want to be trying to climb in and out of a bathtub. So the average small bath remodeling, this was fresh off the internet today, the range is about 2,500 to 10,000, but the average is about 5,000, and that's for a smallish bathroom. It depends. Are you replacing, they consider a full bathroom remodel, cabinets, sinks, counters, flooring, lighting, maybe even ventilation, maybe even a bigger water heater. Now you start doing a full large bathroom remodel, you can expect that that could be, I hate to tell you this, but 18,000, but they had pictures of one that was 80,000. I mean, if you're going to do marble counters and dual shower heads,
All the finishes.
yeah. But the important thing is that you can also buy one of those prefab um installation walk-in showers that have gotten actually nicer and nicer. You see them advertised on the television all the time. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but it's important that you modify your bathroom. But you also should be thinking about stairs. I did
Mhm.
visit a client who actually installed a chair lift. Now her staircase changed directions, went up and then there was a landing and then it twisted. And she spent $8,000. And I Googled the cost of a chairlift, somewhere between 2,000 and 8,500. But let's think about this for a minute. Even though that sounds like, a fairly significant amount of money, if it's 8,000, if that let you age in your home currently without moving or selling a house and buying another smaller house that's one level, and you knew stairs were going to be a problem or they were becoming a problem, that is a good investment in you personally being able to age well in that house. So I would say that that's what you're looking at, maybe a ramp, railings. Do you have railings? If you have 4 or 5 stairs to your front door, which I do, I years ago for my beloved stepfather who came to live closer to me, he needed a railing, and I'm so glad I put one in. So look at where you need railings, better lighting, ramps, flooring. I hate to tell you this, but you don't want to fall on tile.
And we don't want any fluffy rugs either, I think.
Right. The first thing an occupational therapist would tell you is how many fall risks do you have in your house? All those shaggy little rugs. So think about that. Walk around your house and think about actually, um, is the value of modifying my home worth it? Do a pro and con list. How much is it going to cost me to modify this home to make it safe versus, and I tell people, maybe that's not the home you want to age in. That doesn't mean you have to move to a facility. It just may mean that you're buying a smaller house that's one level, less maintenance, less yard. Lots of people tell me, I'm just so tired of maintaining my big home. It's too much for me.
And
Your
then
90,
they have to
your
look out
95-year-old
for
self might thank you for making a move at 70 or 75.
I do have a couple questions here I want to potentially circle back on. I think for Mary, your question, she was asking if the vial of life is available at potentially senior centers or physicians' offices. We do not have it at our lawyers' offices, at least for ours. But I think, Star, you said you can get it online, and that might be a good solution as well.
I tuned out for a minute because I was reading the questions. We're talking about the vial of life.
Yeah, getting
Okay.
it potentially
I
somewhere
don't know if the
that's
senior
online.
center, hi Mary Applin. Is the vial available at the senior center? I don't think so. But I'll talk to Nick about that because it would be great if they had, and basically they're just forms. But I will try to do some research on that and see if there's what I consider a good and complete form that you can download for free online. But I think it'd be great if maybe I'll do a little program at the senior center on the Vial of Life and see if we can have them available. So let me look into that, Mary. It's a great
And then
idea.
We have
So,
another question here asking if we can cover some resources available under Medicare, but I feel like that's going to go into a whole nother conversation because that is a broad topic in what Medicare can and cannot cover. Um, we might have to do another one on that moving forward for webinar, but do you have
and
any
I just
immediate thoughts on that, Star?
um no, because it is such a big, big topic. And I know that Shannon has done seminars and webinars on Medicare and what it covers, what it doesn't cover. I do cover that a little bit in my book too, because there's so much confusion between Medicare and Medicaid, and um, uh, there, there, there's lots of information to share about that, but probably not today. One last thing I wanted to say is I believe, and if anyone out there knows for sure, then add that into the chat, that you can request that an occupational therapist come to your home and do an evaluation of the safety within your home. Now, first of all, that whole fall prevention and recovering falls into that PT, physical therapy, OT, occupational therapy field of knowledge and expertise. What I don't know is whether or not you have to have a reason for Medicare to send and pay for an OT to come to your home. I'm not sure about that. I don't, to me, it would make a lot more sense to be proactive and preventative rather than I fell and now I need an OT to kind of check out my house. But 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 Amber and I are firm believers in, and that's why we're doing this webinar, in trying to get people prepared and anticipate what they can do to age successfully and in their home. And that's one of the things is there an OT has a trained eye. That means they could come in and point out something that you've lived with for 40 years and you never ever thought of as a fall risk. And they're going to say, oh, yeah, yes, it is. You need to modify this, change this. I will say my older sister took an almost lethal fall down a staircase because she turned right 2 feet too soon, not into the bathroom, head first down the stairs. It was a terrible fall, awful fall, really incapacitating. And so I'm not a fan of staircases, as you can imagine. I am a big fan of lots of lights. And remember, if you're on any medications and you're getting up in the middle of the night and you're at all disoriented or you have any balance issues, lighting, lighting, lighting,
Very
and
important.
and really kind of thinking like, what can I do to keep myself safe?
And I think I'm gonna, Deborah coming in here again. Hello. Um, a bidet actually saying that that has been a
Ah,
lifesaver for her mother-in-law in the bathroom. Another bathroom modification because the bathroom is
uh,
so important.
yes, yes, and at the risk of going into this a little bit too much, nobody wants a urinary tract infection, and those can be really, really serious for an elderly person. And so having a bidet makes all the difference in the world for those reasons and helping with personal hygiene. So I'm a big
And I can
fan
also
of
attest to
bidets.
this. We got one for my grandmother recently as well, going through aging in place. So
Yeah,
it's
I
a
have
wonderful
people
tool.
who just love their bidets, and if you and in Europe they're prolific. So if you've had the opportunity to use a bidet, you're going to fall in love with one. Um,
Here's a good question. Is wood better than tile, carpet better than wood for flooring? I feel
that is
like
a
it's
really
potentially
good
wood.
question. I would say tile is the worst just because it's so unforgiving. And so many people I know are using, believe it or not, vinyl planking that looks like wood. First of all, it has a little give. It's softer. It's environmentally friendly. And rather than wood, I love wood. Wood has become very expensive, but wood has a little more give than tile. Now, carpet, I think I'm not an OT, but my experience is that carpet is great. I love carpet, but it has to be, fairly level and I don't think anyone's using shag carpet. Although when
Not
I first
anymore.
moved, not anymore, thank God. I will tell you a funny story, Amber. When I bought this house like 40 years ago, it had, I'm kidding you, not kidding you, orange, like rust and orange combined shag carpet. It was like the first thing I did was like, that has got to
Wow.
go. But you want a carpet that you know that you're not going to catch your the soles of your shoes on.
Low carpet, not the
Low
the
carpet.
thicker one.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think before we go too far down that conversation as well, because that can go into many more specific details of changes and modifications, we also wanted to talk a little bit as well about aging in place. We touched on it in the very beginning, but social aspects and how
Yes.
that really is a concern related to aging in place and what that looks like. Because having um, that social, correct me if I'm wrong here, Star, but essentially having that in place, your circle, if you will, and knowing those important questions, the answers to them that you asked in the very beginning, how far you are from emergency services, do you have a support system? That's a really important conversation that I know you love talking about because it's not one that's considered often.
I know, and the funny thing is that when most of us talk about aging in place successfully, we tend to think our actual environment, our home. And yes, you can't talk about aging in place successfully without looking at all these safety factors. And in some ways, those are almost easier to address because they're obvious.
Good
And
stuff.
generally speaking, but here's something that I always bring up with people. You could have the perfect home. It could be absolutely modified in every way, or brand new architecture that takes in place universal design. That concept of universal design is our newer homes that have wide doorways in case you're in a wheelchair and easy handles to open, and have taken into consideration architecturally, design wise, that they're a home that's already built and modified to age up in. But here's the factor that I really want to stress. If that home is an hour away up in the mountains or too far away or isolated, then you're going to be lonely. I used to do the healthcare assessments when I ran an assisted living facility. So I would go into people's homes and meet with them as they were considering a move out of their home. And that's when I learned that people could be in beautiful homes and still only use maybe 2 rooms in their entire house. And they were lonely and they were isolated. They didn't have a strong personal support team. They didn't have family that were near them or able to spend time with them. And so that one of the biggest factors right after modifications is if you stay in the home you're in, are you going to be able to stay connected to community, connected to your friends? And usually that means being able to drive and get yourself to your clubs, your organizations, your senior center, your church, your place of worship,
Activities.
all of those things. That is so important is evaluating your social connectedness score. Actually, there's a way to do that. And also I want to stress to everybody out there listening that you continue to make an effort to stay connected and not let yourself get isolated. We saw during COVID the effects of isolation. And I'm not talking about people in facilities. That was devastating. I'm talking about the rest of us in the community that couldn't get out and we were afraid to. Don't, I hope
Yeah.
you've all overcome that resistance and that you're staying connected in lots of different ways to do that.
Beautiful. I think we have a couple questions here before we wrap up. So one question here was how to evaluate home care. What should we look for? I think, Star, that goes into having your healthcare advocate really to pay attention to what's going on in the home, how they're doing, and advocating for you to make sure that you're getting the best care.
And Shannon and I spoke about different topics to cover in these webinars, and that was actually one of them is how do you hire and vet a home care company? And my suggestion, Amber, is that we do another webinar on that because that could honestly take a good half an hour. I do talk about that. I mean, I know this sounds a little self-serving, but I do talk about that in my book. about how to hire home health care, what kind of questions to ask, because there's really a long list of questions that you can begin with. It'll give you some peace of mind that you're reaching out to the right company, as well as networking with your friends and asking over and over again, who do you ever hire home care? Do you like them? Are they good? What are the people like? But there's a long list of questions to ask. And I honestly think we should do another webinar on that. And also you'll find they all charge about the same amount. And in Gainesville, I would say that's $25 an hour, give or take some dollars. But again, remember this, most companies have a minimum number of days and hours per week for them to take you on as a client, meaning it's typically somewhere between 3 to 5 days a week, 3 hours a day. There may
So
be
it's
a
really
little
important to vet
variation
those.
on that, but that's what you can expect in this area and probably nationally, although the cost changes a little bit. And by the
Yeah.
way, let me just throw this in. If there's anybody out there that wants to compare costs anywhere in the country for home care, home health care, assisted living, skilled nursing, go to the Genworth, Genworth, Genworth Cost of Care Survey. Genworth is a huge long-term care insurance company, and they do a survey that's recognized in the industry every few years. You can go to that page, put in your zip code anywhere in the country, and compare costs. If you're thinking about, I think I might move to New Mexico, Maine, Illinois, to be closer to somebody, your adult child, it wouldn't hurt to compare costs. It varies tremendously. Don't go to Alaska. That's all I'll say. Where it's
Very cool.
35,000 a month, Amber, in Alaska.
Oh
In
my
Alaska,
gosh.
35,000 a month for a private room in skilled nursing. I kid you not. Yeah,
That's insane.
it is
Um,
insane.
I'm also going to say here, if you are local to Gainesville or if you're in another area, look for your Life Care Planning Law Firm Association associated attorneys as well, because we have what are called our elder care coordinators who help vet those issues for you as part of a service. So that might be one area.
I'd like to stress that Shannon has a very unique model as an elder law attorney because she sees the need and she's addressing the need. So beyond just being an elder law attorney, on her staff is an elder care coordinator with a social work background and has training in addressing the needs of her clients beyond the basic will, trust, living will, healthcare surrogate. And for those of you out there who really need a strong personal and professional support team, this model that Miller Elder Law Firm practices is far greater support than you would find with any standalone attorney. I'm a big fan of this model. Can I add one thing? Do
Go
we have
for it.
time? So,
Yeah, we got a couple more questions I want to be able to get to. But
okay,
yeah,
let me just throw this in, and because we kind of skipped it, and I don't want to miss this. So there is a national organization called the Aging Life Care Association, ALCA, Aging Life Care Association, and you can go to the alca.org website. I'm a member of ALCA, and there are members nationally. They also have a locator by zip code nationally. And an ALCA person is that healthcare advocate, but it's one-on-one. They basically help, they're your healthcare navigator on a one-on-one basis. If you need somebody to help you interface with the doctors, interface with the hospital, oversee a plan of care for somebody in crisis or needing hands-on home health care. I'm a big fan of this organization. Many of them, I am not, but many of them are certified geriatric care managers or certified care managers. Many of them have medical backgrounds, RN backgrounds. Some of them have licensed clinical social workers. and become familiar with that website and look them up and see what you think. We do have some firms here in Gainesville that do that.
Wonderful, Sty. Thank you. Couple quick follow-ups here. Walk-in baths. What do you think of them? I think that those are the preferable option.
I love them. I don't have one. Yes, I think the walk-in baths are great because there's nothing like a good hot bath, especially the ones with the jets, and walk in
Yes.
where the door opens and has a built-in seat. Yeah, they're great.
And one more question on that name you were spelling, Genworth. Is it
Genworth. Yes,
Genworth?
Gen Genworth. Genworth,
Beautiful.
cost of care. And don't be well, heads up. I think the last time they did the survey was 2023. But here's a fun fact, or not. You better be sitting down. There's also a future cost button that you can slide up to see what the costs are for 2024, but it goes up to 2060. For those anybody out there watching that's in their 40s or 50s and you're wondering what it's going to cost you for assisted living or skilled care, you can go way out there to 2060 and see what Genworth, based on the average cost of increases, what long-term care is going to cost you. But please sit down before you do this because as it's just not
Very
going.
numbered.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And then we just had a thank you to Star on how to evaluate home care tips and for the Genworth link, and looking forward to a webinar on evaluating home care. Um, I think that
I
wraps up
think we might
everything.
have our next topic.
Perhaps. I know we've got a schedule, so we'll have to see where we can fit it in then.
Yeah, we do have another one scheduled. Hold on, let me check my calendar. May 22nd is our next scheduled webinar, and we will talk about topics. If for anybody out there that says, could you please talk about this? Send that in. We're paying attention.
We love the suggestions. Exactly. We want to be able to help answer questions you all have. With that said, thank you so much for all of our attendees, and we hope this was very informative and helpful for you today. And thank you, Star, for joining us again here.
Amber, thank you. It was a pleasure. And
Yeah.
thanks everybody for taking your time. We appreciate it.
And then also for our fellow attorneys who may be sitting in today as well, I just wanted to put a little pin out there to let you know we will be doing our exploitation injunction bootcamp coming up this year as well on October 10th and 11th. So stay tuned for any information coming out on that if you're interested in joining. And it looks like we have perhaps a hand raised by Mary, but I think we answered her question related to Genworth. It is Genworth.
Genworth Cost of Care Survey. And just go to the 2023, that's the last one, and then use that cost future calculator, push it up a notch, and you'll see it changed about $200 a month or so for 2024. And hi, Ronnie Lovler. Yes, it is recorded.
You will get a copy of it. I believe it's 24 hours after the webinar. So
Yeah.
keep a lookout for that email.
Send one to me too.
As long as you registered, Star. And then I think I will have to check to see about CLE credit for this with our moderator and staff as well to see what that looks like. So we will get back with you, Valerie, on what that is. Okay, I think that covers everything for today. So thank you all. And we are going to go ahead and close out then.
Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
I am getting a
Thanks.
chat comment here. We do not have CLE credits available for this webinar. It is a free webinar service. Yes. Okay, wonderful. Well,